Welcome back to the Sacred Arts channel, where we talk about all things from the practical to the sacred. Today, we have a very special guest, one of my shamanic sisters, Kerry Skarda. Did I say that right?
You did.
Awesome. Kerry is a born creative. She has been making visual arts since childhood. Her passion and talent led her to pursue a fine arts degree from the Maryland Institute College of Art. As a creative, Kerry learned that being an artist is about staying curious, asking questions, solving problems, and inspiring others. She realized her unique ability to utilize both her creative and analytical brain in harmony. After college, Kerry became a successful graphic designer, eventually creating her own current brand and marketing business, Be Creative Group. With over 25 years as a creative thinker, a heart centered leader, and compassionate mentor, Kerry felt called to explore spirituality, meditation, brain science, neuro emotional coaching, shamanic energy healing, and hypnosis. Today, she divides her energy between artistic endeavors and helping women remove blocks to self love and return to their inner wholeness. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you, Jazzy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I know you've been on quite a journey and I want to dive into all of it. But I want to start at can you share a little bit about what that pivotal moment or experience that really sparked your spiritual awakening and what led you to be on this journey of, you know, the shamanic energy path?
Yeah. So I was living the typical life, thinking that, I was just following the American dream, go to college, get a degree, start a career, have a thriving business. I got married. I had two children. And then I hit my 40th birthday and, we just moved into this great big house and, to the outside world, everything seemed like I should be living the dream. And I was just dying inside. I just was so unhappy. And I started questioning, I just started sort of wondering like, what is this all for? Like, if this doesn't bring me happiness, all the things that are supposed to bring you happiness, what am I doing? What am I here for? And I think that whenever you ask a question with real curiosity, the universe answers. And so I started seeing the number 11. Um, and I kept seeing it so much that I got curious because I'm a very curious person. And I said, why am I seeing this number 11 all the time? And of course, I got online and I Googled, what does it mean when you see the number 11? And that just started me down the whole path of discovering my angels and discovering my team and just starting to work with them. And that led me, down the just really opened up my world to spirituality. And I haven't stopped since. Yeah.
Mm.
And so I'm 54 now. So it's been 14 years and I'm still going really strong with it.
That's really beautiful. I mean, I feel like a lot of people can relate to that if even if they haven't started on that path where you feel this uncomfortableness of like, wow, I really built this life that I really thought I wanted. But in the end, you kind of start to think about like, oh, did I betray myself? Is this actually what I wanted? Is this actually the path that I want? And even if you did want those things, is this the path that I want to continue on, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was like I kept thinking, well, the next thing will make me happy, right?
Mhm.
Like, well, when we move out of this house and get this house, I'll be happy. And everything that I got and achieved, yes, I mean, it brought me happiness for a short amount of time, but it wasn't sustainable. It didn't last.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's just really it was that what is this all for? And I remember asking people at the time, like, because I was truly curious, like, what's life about? Like, what does it mean to you? And of course, everyone has their own story and what life means to them. So it was an interesting exploration with people. But I realized that I had to find my own meaning in life.
So I'm really curious though, now that you've gone through all of this and you've been in this for 14 years, what does life mean to you today?
What does life mean to me today? Life means living from my heart.
Mm,
Really, it's just to love and be loved.
mm,
Yeah.
I
It
feel
really,
that.
everything just comes down to that.
Oh, yeah. I want to really get deep into your experience, your recent experience with your dad. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about what specifically drew you to shamanism and this path of, the guided energy medicine that we're both on?
Yeah. So, earlier on in my spiritual journey, it was more about angels. It was more about, I knew I had angels, I knew I had a team, and I was communicating with them. And, the word shaman, was like felt way too far out for me. And, and I don't know what happened, but one day just, I saw something on, I think it was the Shift Network, and it was a class, it was a seminar they were doing with Sandra Ingerman, who is a well-known female shaman. And I just said, I think I want to take this. I don't know why. It just called to me. And it had never called to me before. And so I took that, I took that online Shift Network class with Sandra, and it was like, this is what I want to do. It just resonated so deeply with me. And, the first shamanic journey that I took in that class, the very first one, it was just a drumming journey. I went out into the middle world, and I walked into my meadow, and I met my guide, and it was this crazy looking creature, like a horse. Yeah, like a horse kind of creature, but not a horse. It had this long hair and these eyes. And it was standing there in this meadow. And I walked out, and it looked at me, and I looked at it, and it said telepathically, it said, it's about time. It's like, I've been waiting for you to get here. It's about time you've reached this place. And then it gave me this big smile, and then it just sort of trotted off. And I was like, oh my God, what just happened? And that really was what launched me into this. And then, so the whole path of just becoming more spiritual, becoming more ceremonial in my life just felt like it was calling to me.
Mm, I love
Yeah.
that story. It's so powerful. The first time you get to meet your guide, and what a beautiful way to get to do that with Sandra, because I love Sandra. I've read all of her books. I may have taken that same exact class actually
Mhm.
at some point in time. Super powerful stuff. And I want to dive a little bit deeper because we're going to get into some of the work that you did with your dad before he passed. And I think that ties really closely with the work that we both did at the academy in terms of guided energy medicine. Could you just explain to us just a little bit about what alignments mean in the context of your spiritual practice and how it has influenced your life thus far?
Yes. So becoming a shamanic energy practitioner, um, it has been really life-changing because I know how to open myself up to spirit and become this hollow bone, this channel, to have spirit come through me for others, and also for myself. And the energetic alignment that we learned how to do is it's just so powerful for so many people. Like, it's been powerful for me to receive. I've had amazing things happen where I remember I had this pain in my wrist. And I asked for, I asked for an alignment, and I received a few of them. And after this one alignment that I received, literally my pain was gone. I mean, it was like it didn't even exist anymore. And I've witnessed that so many times. And then what happened in my own path is that my gifts started to come online, and I really was asking for clairvoyance because I didn't have clairvoyance up till that point. And I said, I'm an artist, I'm a creative, I should be able to see things. Like, why don't I see things? And so the first few alignments that I received, I asked that, like that was my intention, to bring my gifts online, specifically clairvoyance. And when I was gifted my clairvoyance, it just really made everything so much richer in
Mm.
this path. It's an amazing place when you can close your eyes and just see this amazing metaphorical world. And then when you learn how to ask, what does it mean? What are you showing me? And it's pretty wild. And I really wish I could record what I see in my third eye during the alignments, because I explain it to people and I'm witnessing it and I'm trying to really bring it to them, but they haven't seen it. So I actually had one person once, who was on mid journey while I was explaining to him what I was seeing, or after the alignment. And he was on mid journey, actually, it's like typing in prompts and creating AI artwork. And he got pretty close to what I was describing to him that I saw. It was really wild. So I thought, wow, that's kind of a good idea. Maybe I could do that too. Bring the art into the alignment for someone.
Yes. Oh my God, that's incredible.
Hmm.
I will never forget. And, you and I have had several alignments together where I'm receiving from you. And I'll never forget the one where the dolphins came in for me. That I think about that probably 2 or 3 times a week.
Wow.
It's just it was one of the most powerful alignments I've had in a time where I really needed support. And those dolphins have stayed with me, throughout since that time when it came in during that alignment. And it really was so supportive and has allowed me to tap back into my joy. And so
Yes.
I can totally identify with that. And I actually went on to Mid Journey and I created something with a dolphin to write about it.
Hmm.
So what an incredible idea to be able to leverage the technology that's emerging with
Yeah.
this like ancient wisdom and gift that you have to be able to really tie that experience in for the people that work with you.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet, but I just was such a good idea. And wow, I really want to incorporate this into what I'm doing. It's funny
Yeah.
that you mentioned the dolphins, because my lion back here, he also came to me in one of my first alignments, and he was so powerful, that he literally, alignments are crazy. I feel and see crazy things. So it was like my chest opened, it went like this, my heart was exposed. And then he came in front of me and he just went whoosh right into my heart. And it was like, he just became part of me. And then like in the alignment, my chest closed back up. So he's in me, like he's always in me. He's in my heart, and he will forever be in my heart. And then my friend, who is like an intuitive painter and poet, she painted that for me.
That is
Yeah.
beautiful. I got chills just listening to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty
I
wild.
love that. Oh my gosh, so much magic that happens, so many miracles that happen during alignments. Which brings me to, I would love to, I haven't heard the story yet. And we've talked about, doing this podcast for a little while. I know that you just experienced a great loss in your life. Your dad just passed away a few months ago. And I just kind of want to hear about the story leading up to that and how you were able to share this gift with him.
Hmm. Okay, so get my tissues ready. I might cry. Um, yeah, so my dad was 81 and I'll just tell you from the start. It's a little bit of a long story. I'll try to make it shorter,
Oh,
but
please take
my
your
my
time. Yeah.
my dad was 81. He had just turned 81 in November, and his health was starting to decline from pulmonary hypertension. And I always took him to his doctor's appointments. So, I got to spend time with him and everything, and I knew his health condition. And, one day my mom called me and she was in tears and she said, Daddy can't breathe. We're going to call an ambulance. And I said, well, why don't you let me take him to the hospital where his doctor is? Because she really wanted him in that hospital and not the one that's closest to my parents. And so she said, okay. So as I'm driving down to their house, they're about a half an hour away from me. And as I'm driving down on the highway, um, I saw several hearses on the Beltway that day, not funeral processions, just hearses. And I got a knowing, and it wasn't a good knowing, but I got this knowing that this was not good for my dad. And so I picked him up, I took him to the ER. He was checked into the intensive care unit. And he was in there for about a week. And it was touch and go at first. But after about 3 days, his doctor said, we're going to move him out of the ICU. He's doing better. We've removed the catheter out of his heart. He's improving. He had had the flu. My dad got the flu on top of the pulmonary hypertension, right? That's why he was having trouble. So after I had heard that he was going to be moved and he was improving, I let myself relax and I said, okay, good. Dad's going to be fine. My intuitions were wrong. Thank God. Right. And so I think it was about the fourth day in the hospital. It was my sister and I were taking turns visiting him. My mom and my other sister had the flu as well, so they weren't able to visit him. So it's just me and my sister. And so it was a Wednesday, and it was my turn to visit, and I had to work all day, and I had my kids, and I was kind of tired. It was starting to get to be nighttime, and I really didn't want to go to the hospital, but it was like, you know what? No, I said, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. So I get in my car and I go down. And, I walked in to the ICU room. It was about 7 o'clock at night and it was dark. They had the lights down and it was sort of actually kind of cozy. It was weird that an ICU room would be cozy, but that it felt a little bit cozy. And I walked in and I said, how you doing, Dad? And he said, I haven't had a very good day. I'm really uncomfortable. My stomach is really uncomfortable. And I said, okay, well, we talked a little bit. And I had shared with him something that in that moment, I had shared something with him that had happened to me that day, that I had discovered this core belief about myself that I had been walking around with and looking a lens through my whole life. And I just felt the desire to share that with him because it involved my mom, and he really appreciated the fact that I shared with him. And so we're sitting there, we're kind of, we'd gotten in a place where we were sort of talking about deep things. And all of a sudden, just the idea came in, give your dad an alignment. You can help your dad with his discomfort, give him an alignment. Now, I had never talked to my dad about what I was doing. I never talked to him about studying shamanism or anything like that. He knew about my spirituality because we had talked about that. We had gotten quite close around that topic. And so I just said, hey, Dad, I don't really know how much you know about this, but I'm studying energy medicine, and I think I can maybe help with your discomfort. Would you want me to give you an alignment? And he said, yeah, sure. he didn't ask me anything. He didn't say, what is this or anything? He just said, sure. So I explained it to him and I said, all you have to do is just close your eyes and relax and just open your heart and receive. It's all you have to do. And he said, okay, I can do that. So I asked him if I could enter his energetic field and he said, sure. So he closes his eyes and, normally in alignments we pick, spirit picks a soundtrack, we play the music, we go into the shamanic state. I didn't pick music because there was already a lot of music going on in the room. Like there was the machines, the oxygen machine, and sort of it was enough noise going on in there that I didn't need music. So I just, cleaned my energy and went into the shamanic state and I started the alignment and it was, it was a lot of clearing, a lot of energy clearing around his stomach area where he was having discomfort. And I think at one point, they had me put my hand on his heart and I could feel how strained his heart was pumping, like through his hospital gown. And so I'm doing that for a while. And then all of a sudden in the alignment, I felt and then I saw his mom, my grandmother, my nanny. I saw her come in the room to the left side of his bed. And she came right up to the side of his bed and she was just so happy to see him. And and then and then to the right of him, his dad, my pop, walked in. And so they're standing there. And of course, I'm in tears at this point because I know who they are. They were my grandparents. And they are just so full of joy. They have just smiles on their faces. And it was so beautiful. And then my Aunt Cass, who was his sister who had passed, she came in behind me and kind of came in and sort of walked next to me and was standing at the side of his bed where I was. And they were all with him. And it was just so beautiful. And whew, I mean, I just knew that he was in good hands. Like I just thought, wow, look at them coming in to just bring him such comfort. And this must be what he needs right now. Again, I was not thinking anything about him leaving, you know. And so I finished the alignment and I, of course, was tears down my face. My dad had not opened his eyes at all. He did not really know that I was crying because didn't say anything to him. And so I let him know. I said, Dad, the alignment is complete. Take your time. You can open your eyes when you're ready. And so I was just standing there, like looking at him. And it took him a little bit. And then he sort of like opened his eyes and he was just staring at the bottom of the bed. He didn't look at me. He was staring at the bottom of the bed. And his eyes got really wide. And he said, Kerry, I just saw an angel at the bottom of my bed. And I said, you did? And he said, I did. And I said, what did it look like, Dad? And he said, oh, Kerry, she was beautiful. He said, she was so beautiful. He said, she was glowing. And I just said, wow, Dad, that is amazing. I said, we all have guardian angels. And maybe she's your guardian angel and she's checking in on you. And he just said, yeah, and I could see his sort of like gears turning. My dad was a very kind of skeptical guy. And then I said, would you like me to share my experience? And he said, yeah. And then I told him what I experienced about his mom and his dad and his sister coming in. And, now he's crying, I'm crying. And he's still looking straight ahead. Like he hadn't really looked at me yet. I'm looking at him, but he was still looking ahead. And then at some point, he turned to me and he said, with like this amazement in his face and eyes, he said to me, so there really is more than this. And I just said, yeah, Dad, there is more than this. There is more than this. And then we just had this beautiful conversation about, my beliefs that we are this eternal soul that would live in this body. And I said, Dad, you think you're Joseph Skarda. You think that that's who you are. Like, you think you're this body, but you're not. You're an everlasting soul that lives in that body. And and I believe that we're in a soul family. I believe that we will see each other again. And he said, so there really is a heaven? And I said, yeah, yeah, there's a beautiful heaven. There's a beautiful place that we all go to. It's just we're not in pain. We're just in pure love. And we all get that. We all get that, you know? And it was just the most beautiful conversation. And, and then he just said to me, he said, Kerry, he said, I just want to tell you how proud I am of you. He said, I want to tell you how much I love you. And he said, I hope that the rest of the family can see you for how I see you and appreciate you. And then I got to tell him how much I love him and what a wonderful dad he's been. And just we had a beautiful, beautiful 2 hours together. And so it's time to leave, 9 o'clock, they kick you out of the ICU. And I looked up and I saw the clock and I said, okay, Dad, well, I have to go. It's 9. And he said, okay, and I said, Shelly's coming tomorrow, to see you. And then I'll come on Saturday. And he said, okay. And it was funny because, when I leaned in and I kissed him. I kissed him on his lips. In my family, we kiss each other on the lips, right? I know not all families do that. I kissed him on his lips and then I kissed him on his forehead like a little kid. And I just told him I loved him. And I started to walk out of the room and then something just stopped me. And I turned around and I said, let me get a picture of you, Dad. And he said, okay. And he had this big smile on his face. And I snapped this picture and he was like literally glowing, like he was a totally different person than the person I walked into. Like the person I walked into was in pain. He was, it was the energy was denser and everything. And he had the pain in his stomach had subsided and he felt better. And he was glowing. I mean, that's all I can say. And I went home feeling really good. I just went home like, wow, I was able to share myself vulnerably with my dad, probably for the first time in my life. I was able to use my gifts of the shamanic energy to offer my dad some comfort. And it was just amazing. So I went home, I went to bed, I felt really good. I woke up the next day, everything was great. And then at noon, I got a call from my sister, and she said, Dad has gone into cardiac arrest and he's on life support. And so, of course, I just, rushed down to the hospital, and um, he was already gone, by the time we got there. The doctor told us that he went in to see my dad in the morning, and he had been with my dad all week, so he knew him, right? And he told us, he said, I went in to see your dad this morning. And he said, and when I walked into his room, he said, he was the brightest and the happiest that I've seen him since he's been in here. He said, and he was just in such good spirits. And he said, as I'm standing there talking to him, actually about moving him out of the ICU, he said, your dad started to cough and he couldn't stop coughing. And he said, at some point, your dad looked at me and he said, I'm not going to make it through this, doc. And as soon as he said that, his heart stopped. And that was it. That was it. They tried. I mean, they resuscitated. They did get his heart beating again with the paddles, but it was like 15 minutes. So, by the time we got there, he was already gone, and I knew it. Like I as soon as we walked in the room, he wasn't in his body anymore. I knew that. And So I was, it was really, really alarming and tough and unexpected. But now in hindsight, when I look at what happened the night before, I know for a fact that, his family came, his angel was there, and they were coming to walk him home. They were coming to bring him home. And so he wouldn't be alone. And that was a real gift that I got to share with my family. I got to share my story and my experience with my dad. And that really made them feel a lot better about the whole thing. Everybody was in shock, but I couldn't have asked for anything more um, than that with my dad. So that's the story.
That was such a powerful story. So beautiful. It had all the things, right? All the things. Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful and personal story. And what a gift to have been able to share that with your dad.
Yeah.
And so much confirmation, right? Everything the doctor said, your ability to also share it with your family, like absolutely incredible. I'm wondering, how was witnessing your father's like openness to alignment and being able to share that in the moment with you? How has that been for you since experiencing that, and of course going through the grief process and all that?
Yeah. It was really life-changing for me to be able to stand in my trueness and my just to be vulnerable, to show who I really am to my dad, and to not worry about what he would think or how he would feel. And it has given me so much power to just do that with other people and to not hold back what I believe and what I believe is true. And I think he gave me that gift that day. He wasn't judgmental. He wasn't questioning. He was just very accepting and very receiving and just so thankful. Um, and the fact that we got to say goodbye to each other without realizing we were saying goodbye to each other. I mean, I do carry some guilt, honestly, because I was the last person in our family to see him. And I did have this amazing experience with him. And so, I mean, in all honesty, I hesitated to share it with them because I didn't want to make my sisters feel bad or my mom feel bad. My mom hadn't seen her husband in 5 days because she couldn't come to the hospital to see him because she was so sick. And neither could my older sister. And so I didn't want anyone to feel bad about it, you
And
know?
those are all very true and valid feelings, right? Because it's just so hard to lose somebody that's so important in your family, or even somebody that's close to you, right? And having that opportunity and being so blessed with being able to not only be there and be the last person to see him, but also share this amazing gift. I can absolutely empathize with that feeling of guilt,
Yeah,
and like, oh, I, this was so amazing and I want to share it, but also I don't want to make anybody feel like,
exactly.
a certain
Yeah.
kind of way. Yeah.
I think it didn't, thankfully, it didn't make anyone feel bad. I think
Yeah.
it really did comfort, it really did comfort my family.
I can imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah, and his sisters, he still has two living sisters. And it just, the story spread through the family and I think everyone just I did check in with my guides, like, is it is it appropriate to share this?
Hmm.
And of course, yes, I got a yes. So I knew that it was for the best to share it. And so I did. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Ultimately, when you're checking in with guidance, the spirit team that's for your highest and best, you kind of have to go with that flow and let the chips fall where they fall. And thankfully everybody feels comfort in your story. It's death is such not only a natural part of life, but it really brings in such deep sadness and emotions that we just don't want to feel, especially when we've lost somebody close to us. And so I'm kind of wondering, how have you been able to navigate your own grief journey,
Yeah.
following his
Yeah.
passing?
So, I mean, we swung right into funeral arrangements and supporting my mom. Luckily I have two sisters, so I was not alone. And we just all came together as a family. All the nieces and nephews came, like everybody was just at my mom's house the night that my dad died. And we got out albums and we're looking through albums, and it was just this beautiful moment. It's just we were laughing and we were reminiscing and really just sort of celebrating my dad. um and then we went right into all the funeral arrangements and helped my mom with everything, and we were taking turns staying with her at her house so that she wouldn't be alone. And so, that was about 2 weeks of that kind of support and being together as a family. And honestly, that time for me feels like it was just this time warp, like time stopped, and that's all I cared about. Everything else just took a back seat to that. And I'm so glad I was able to do that. And then, after that, I felt so good about where my dad was and what happened. And, I did not expect to be stricken with debilitating grief. But that is what happened. I I literally fell into the deepest, darkest depression, grief space that was just so surprising to me. It just felt like everything just fell in on my life, and I was barely functioning. I was just had enough energy to do the bare minimum. Um, and just I felt like this dark cloud had just fallen down on me and was just following me around wherever I went. And um no tools, alignments, it just didn't matter, nothing worked. um and so but I allowed it because I know that feelings need to be felt. And so I said, okay, I'm going to sit with this grief, I'm going to allow this grief, and I'm going to love this grief. And it's just what it needs. It just needs some time. And so I did that, and I wasn't judging myself. I was being very gentle, being very graceful with myself, and allowing the grief to be with me. And it went on for, I mean, nearly 2 months. And at some point, I couldn't function anymore. I couldn't live that way. And, um, and so I started asking my dad, I started asking him for help. And I just was like, Dad, I know you're here with me, and I really need your help. And I'm I'm okay with the grieving. It felt, I want to tell you that the grieving felt very multi-leveled. Like I can't really explain it, but the grief did not feel like just my own grief, right? So it was a surprise to me. So I started asking him. I was like, Dad, I really need your help with this. I can't seem to lift this on my own. And I was also praying to God. I mean, I was in a dark place, Jazzy, and I mean, I was talking to God, and I said to him, I said, God, I said, you know, put me into service, like use me for service to humanity or take me out. I mean, that's really what I said. I was like, I'm ready to go. Just take me, you know, I'm out, coach, kind of thing. Um, so I was kind of talking to both of them at the same time. And that, I talked to them each night and each day for a couple of days. And nothing was lifting, nothing was happening. And but life had to go on, right? Like I had to work, I have teenage kids. So it was a Saturday, and I had to drive like 45 minutes to a client presentation on a Saturday morning in the pouring down rain. But I got myself up and I got up there and I did it. And as I'm after the presentation, my client came over to me and she said, I'm so sorry about your dad, you know. And I said, yeah, it's just been really hard. The sadness is just so deep. And as I'm talking to her, I look out the window of the place we were in, and there was this big banner in like across the street in like a parking lot. And it was like a big rectangular banner. And it was red, and red is my favorite color. And it catches my eye and I look at it and I see my dad's name on this banner and it says Joseph. My dad's name was Joseph, right? In white script lettering, Joseph. And there was another part to the name, but the banner had actually fallen over, like, because it was like pouring down raining, right? The banner had fallen over. So the rest of the name was covered and I just see my dad's name. And I was like, I knew immediately, as soon as I saw my dad's name and I saw that banner, I knew it was for me. I was like, oh my God, that's from my dad. My dad is sending me a sign that he hears me, you know? And so this just gave me a little tickle. I was like, oh, my dad hears me. That's so cool. So I leave the meeting. I walk out to my car and I get in my car and my car battery is dead, like dead. Will not start, no clicks, nothing. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm 45 minutes from home. It's pouring down raining. And I remembered that I had bought a jump starter, like one of those little battery jump starter things at Christmas time, and I stuck it in my trunk. So I was like, oh, I had one of those. So I go in, I get it. I'd never even taken it out of the box. Like it was brand new. And I don't even know if it's charged, but I, take it out, read the instructions, and I go around. And luckily it had a charge on it. And so, I mean, it's probably a battery no bigger than my phone, right? And I hook it up to my battery and I start my car. My car starts right up. I was like, oh, thank God my car started right up. I'm just going to drive home now. So I get on the Beltway and I'm driving home, and it's actually 95 and still pouring down raining. And I get into the middle lane and I pull up behind this gold SUV, and the license plate on this SUV, it was as if it had a light on it. I mean, it was just like white. It was like glowing white, even though it was gloomy, rainy day. And I couldn't help but it caught my eye. And it said, the license plate said, serve God. SERVGOD, serve God. And I just started laughing. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I get it. Right? Like, I get it. Serve God. I got the message, And so I'm behind this person for like a half an hour on the Beltway. And then eventually I had to pass them. So I go over to the left of them into the fast lane. And I'm like, I have to see who's driving this car. I have to see who's driving this car, who has a license plate that says serve God. So I'm pulling up, and I look over. And as I'm looking over, the driver of this SUV, she was a African-American woman, old woman, like wrinkly skin. She had this like scarf wrapped around her head. She looked at me at the same time. She looked at me. I looked at her. Our eyes caught each other. And I swear to God, like the Matrix movie where time just stops and it's like, ooh, that's what it felt like. Like time just stopped and we looked at each other, and I'm looking at her and she's looking at me. And as I'm leaving her eyesight, she winked at me. And I was just like, oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, it was just insane, right? So I drive home, I pull in my garage, and I'm sitting in my garage like, what just happened? What just happened? And as I walked in my door into my house, everything just lifted. The grief, the sadness, the heaviness, the cloud. It was gone. It was just gone. And I walked in and I had all this energy and I was like, oh my God, it's gone. I couldn't access it. I couldn't get back to it. Like I didn't, it was like it didn't even happen. It was just gone. And, shortly after that, the sun came out and the rain cleared up. And I was just like, oh my God, this is just simply amazing. Like, thank you, God. Thank you, Dad. You heard my prayers, you answered them. And I know now for a fact that when you ask, you receive without a shadow of a doubt. Ask and you shall receive. And I know it's true.
I
You
know
know,
it's true. I know it's true. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so what happened was I just was happy, I had energy. The sadness was gone, the grief was gone. Um, and I actually had scheduled a coaching session with Rose from the academy before it had lifted. She had recommended that I schedule with her. And so I had that appointment with her that Monday, so this happened on a Saturday. And then I met with her on Monday and I told her the whole story and everything. And she didn't know any of it. And that's when she shared with me that grief, um, the reason my grief felt so multi-leveled and heavy is because we can carry grief for our family members who cannot process it, and also for our ancestors. And
Mhm.
that made so much sense to me. I was like, that makes sense why it felt like it wasn't just my grief, you know? And then I just felt really honored that I was able to carry that for whoever needed me to carry it, you know? It was amazing.
Sounds incredible. You can't make this stuff up.
I
I
know you
mean,
can't make it up, right? It's just, you can't make it up.
I'm speechless. This story just has all the feels for me. Like it's so comforting as well, like having experienced grief myself and just hearing your story just gives me so much hope and so much um new perspective. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
you're welcome. You're welcome.
I want to jump into how has this kind of shifted your own, beliefs, your own practices,
Mhm.
and how has it helped you kind of cope, with any other fallout that, whether it's grief within your family or grief within yourself, like what are some ways that you've been able to cope with that?
I have such more empathy and compassion for people who have lost loved ones. I think that of course, felt for people in the past, but now I have a whole new level of understanding for them. And and I also understand that you cannot just tell somebody to get over it, or expect somebody to just go back into their life after a week. It's everyone has their own process with grief and it take their own timeline. And while everybody else in their life gets back to normal, it could take them months, it could take them years to to process their grief. So I just have a lot more empathy for people who are going through the grieving process, and the people that maybe didn't get closure with their loved ones before they passed. Um, and I always tell everyone that I talk to my dad all the time, and
Mm.
I know he hears me, and I know he's listening. And I encourage my sisters to talk to my dad. I encourage my mom to talk to my dad. And I said, he's listening, he's right there.
Hmm.
I know he can hear you. And so they do,
Yeah.
they've been talking to him too.
That's so awesome. That
Yeah.
is incredible. I have the same advice for people. When my grandma passed 2 years ago, before I joined the academy, I started, I was already doing cacao rituals, but I started to incorporate my conversations. And it's so interesting because I couldn't feel her at first. And I think something happens after we die where you kind of, this is me making it up, okay? Like I think this is what I imagine. I think that they have to go and kind of learn how to interact with us, so it takes some time. So the person that was actually coming in was her mom. Her
Okay.
mom had such a different vibe. And I met her probably once or twice, but I would talk to my aunt like this is who I feel is coming in, and this is like the personality. She's like, that's her. That's
Hmm.
exactly her. And so
Hmm.
now when my grandmother comes in, because I talk to them over my cacao, like,
Yeah.
and I just have these conversations. And I don't just do it with cacao, I do it all the time now, but that was kind of just
Yeah.
my process for it.
Yeah.
They both come in.
Yeah.
And it's just such a comforting experience. Now, I still miss my grandma. I still cry over my grandma. I still want her to be here and be able to, for her to, especially like on the heels of like Mother's Day coming in, right? Like I'm missing her even more. But developing that relationship with them on the other side, because they're embodying not just who they were in this lifetime, but probably other lifetimes and things like that.
Yeah.
um it's such an incredible experience that I think it's all our own journey, right?
Mhm.
And what a great advice to give others, and to be able to talk about that with your family members.
Yeah.
So
Well, I have
cool.
another funny little story about my dad. And so the day after he died, I woke up the day after he died with a song blaring in my head. And um, I just knew I got the intuition that like this was from my dad and that I needed to share this with my family, with my sisters and my mom. And so I went down there to my mom's house the day after, and I walked in and I said, my oldest sister, and my mom were there. My middle sister wasn't there yet. And I said to them, I said, guys, I said, I woke up with a song in my head and I have the intuition that it's from dad and I need to play it for you. And basically the song is, how much I love you, right? And it's a beautiful song. And so I played it for them. And then Donna said, and then my oldest sister, Donna, she said, oh my God, I think dad sent me a song today too. She's like, I'm getting in the shower and I had the radio on and I said to dad, Dad, I just need to know you're okay. If you're okay, just send me a sign. And she said, and then the song Oh Donna came on the radio. I know, right? Like that's not a typical song to come on a radio. Oh Donna.
Not these days.
And then I said to her, and then I said, well, let's wait for Shelly to come in and let's see if dad sent Shelly a song. My dad loved music. I got my love of music from my dad, right?
Mm.
And so Shelly comes in and we said, Shell, did dad, did you get a song this morning? I didn't say, did dad send you a song? I'm like, did you happen to get a song this morning? She was like, oh my God, I did. How did you know? And I was like, oh, because dad sent us all songs.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. He
I
sent
love
all
that.
songs. It's been a bit magical. I'm not gonna lie. I miss my dad terribly. It's true when they say I'll just be sitting here and I will forget and I will say, oh, let me call dad and see how he's doing, see how he's feeling. And then it'll hit me that I can't call my dad like
Mhm.
on the phone. So when that hits me, I just go up instead. Instead of using the phone to call him, I use you know, my
Yeah.
intuition to call him, and I just connect with him on that level. And so I know he's always there for me. I know he's always there. And I continue to call him in. I'm just like, hey dad, I could really use your support right now, or I could really use your help. And I feel like I have a sense that, like, well, my dad didn't feel like toward the end, because of his health issues, and his full-time oxygen use and everything, that my dad helped everybody. Like, he helped me so much in my life with so many things. Like, he was always the guy to call. And toward the end, he couldn't help. And I feel like now that he's on the other side, he is reveling in the fact that I'm calling him for help and he can help me. Like, I can help my family again. I can help my daughter again. That's just what I just have that sense that he's very happy that he is able to assist again, because he was such a man of service. Such a beautiful hearted person. And I just feel like, in reflecting on my dad through all this, it it made me realize that that's where my heart came from. My heart came from my dad, you know.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, so beautiful, Carrie. Thank you so much. I have one last question for you, or
Yeah.
maybe two more questions, but looking ahead, how do you envision kind of integrating these lessons and experiences with your dad and your own grief?
How am I going to integrate them?
Yeah,
Um,
maybe into your practice or,
I
you
feel
know,
like I feel like I feel like talking to people about them has helped so many people. Like, sharing this story with friends and people in my life, it seems to help people a lot, you know. It seems to give them hope.
yeah,
And and so I will continue to do that. And I will I just think that's how I'm integrating it, is that I'm continuing to keep it alive and talk about it,
yeah, that's
because
beautiful.
it is, like you said, you can't make it up. You can't make it up. It's real.
Yeah.
Um, and for people, and just like my dad, right? Like, just like this conversation with this man who, was sort of a disbeliever, and a skeptic. And I truly believe that he allowed himself to go when he did that quickly, because he knew that there was something more for him. And I think if more people know that, then it'll just make that transition for people easier. So I don't know, like, how I'll integrate it or incorporate it, but I feel like just talking about it is enough right now. And
Mm.
the rest will come if I'm called to do something more with it, or to, maybe I'm called to work with other people who are in that stage of life or something. I don't know. I'm just, I'm guided by spirit. I listen and I follow, and you know, spirit lead me. That's what I say all the time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. And lastly, if people wanted to stay in touch and ask questions and or get an alignment from you, where can they find you?
So I don't have a website or anything for this work, that I'm doing. It's really just a passion right now for me. Uh, and But I do have an email address that is, creativeheartsonfire@gmail.com. And that's kind of my thing. This just burning heart of passion, and for life, um, and for love.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your experience and offering the story to the audience. Thank you so much. And for all the listeners, if you enjoyed this story, please comment down below. Let us know about your own personal grief stories, and like and subscribe.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Jazzy.